For the project for this class, I really wanted to take a look at our grading policies before really digging into any revision of a former unit, just to see what was possible. As I do with my students, I will include pictures of my animals to keep you entertained during this process. I think what stood out to me the most in our student handbook and faculty handbook locally at Auburn High School, we have 5 sections: operations, safety, learning, culture, and communications, in that order. So learning falls in the middle of the policies as far as what's valued, which I think is really interesting. The academic policies don't come to the 3rd page of that learning section in the student handbook. And the main requirements, what's here at the top of the page, is that each teacher will publish for each class a student evaluation procedure that explains the method of grading and the percentage for the individual and or group work, academic test, homework, and classroom participation. Grading policies should adhere to those outlined in the ACS Parent and Student Handbook. Spoiler alert, the only thing the student handbook says is that we've got a grade on that letter scale, where an A is 90 to 100, a B is 80 to 89, etc., etc., etc. What is interesting too is that the makeup work policy is very detailed as to how that can work and what it takes to be excused and allowed to make up work. This is the aforementioned grading policies from the city, the district handbook. It does not come until page 57 or 58. And it is followed by a description of grade appeal procedures, promotion requirements, and graduation requirements. So similar to the school handbook, this doesn't come until late in the handbook. It's not particularly detailed. It seems like within Auburn City Schools, there truly is a lot of flexibility with how you can address grades, as long as it is published and as long as it adheres to that letter grading scale. I think what's really interesting is how this translates to syllabi from across the curriculum. This first one is from chemistry. We've got a detailed breakdown for the categories. It's also got some further breakdowns of what an incomplete will receive and how it will be graded. But for the most part, the syllabi containing grading policies looks like the others. Algebra, we've got tests and projects at 80%, quizzes, homework, and classroom at 20%. Spanish, we've got classwork, homework, participation at 30%, quizzes and projects at 50%, midterm and final exam at 20%. Psychology has a total point system, gives you the final exam is worth roughly 10%. And then we have an excerpt from an English 10 class that is a 60-40 split. So as far as each teacher will publish an evaluation procedure, what that seems to mean is that each teacher will publish the percentage breakdown of the grading categories, and nobody goes further than that to say this is what you can expect, this is how many tests, things like that. Based on analyzing the grading policies, I came to the conclusion that the real limitations that I have are I have to have a 40-60 split for minor and major assignments per the English 10 grading policy that we've decided on. I have to publish grades weekly, and I have to give the same final as other English 10 teachers. So this means there is a level of ungrading I can do in the classroom, but I can't escape numbers entirely, which I think we all knew was going to be the case as we go through this process. So what I've decided to do is to revise my research writing project, which serves as our midterm. We all write a research paper, and that's our common midterm. And so I think I have some opportunities within that to work through some ungrading practices. So this is the assignment sheet I used in the spring. Believe it or not, this project has come a long way in the 3 years that I've been at Auburn High School. It used to be on social issues very broadly, which is just challenging because it's a little too much choice for kids. It's too unfocused, I think, in my experience. So it's a little bit more focused. Students are asked to make a research-based argument about a topic in education that has two sides. So the goal is for us to work through some research skills, learning how to use the academic search engines that we have available on campus. This is the first year that students are on our high school campus, so the resources are similar to what they have at the junior high, but not always exactly the same. And we also really emphasize using MLA format, possibly to the detriment of students, which is another topic entirely, but one worth noting, especially as I have spent this semester trying to learn APA and realize I just need to make some adjustments there. So the overall goals, like I said, are to make a research-based argument based on a social issue. So I'm hoping that students will use text evidence well, that they will synthesize some research, that they will put two opposing sides of an issue in conversation with each other. And this unit usually takes about 2 weeks. I really do use this assignment sheet, not unlike a calendar. We do the project in the pieces that are listed there in the order that they are listed. We start with the proposal, we work on source notes, we have a thesis statement. I don't always do the outline. It depends on the group of students. We have an introduction paragraph, the first body, second and third conclusion. We worry about that rough draft. We really spend a day on the works cited page, and my process, the way that it looks, is very much that students write and submit things, and I am giving feedback on every level. So they give me their proposal, we have a conversation, or they get a narrative comment in Schoology that says, like, yes, this is good, have you thought about X, feedback like that, and we continue to go through that with the source notes, with the thesis statement. So lots and lots of feedback throughout the process is already a part of what I do. But what I find is that I still have students who are just making the editorial revisions. They're not really taking in the feedback. They're just trying to check boxes. And I think some of that is because we do have things so very structured in what we expect here, and I think some of that is from us trying to have a uniform assignment, which is just a hard thing to do, but I tried to revise in a way that kept the uniformity, because our real only two big expectations are that we have the same midterm and the same final, and so I'm trying to stick within those bounds but also introduce some ungrading. So for the ungrading, I think the most important piece here is that each one of those steps is worth classwork points. So it's like something like 150 or 200 classwork points. And then students also get a major assignment grade. The way that I have always done this is that students get credit for submitting the proposal. Like, you submit it, you're going to get 10 points. I may be giving you feedback that says, hey, this doesn't work, I need you to redo this, but they get that 10 points. And so I try to make it so this is all cushion, so that even if their paper doesn't do so well, which if we go through this process and you get feedback on every stage and you take the feedback, your paper is likely to get an A or a B by the nature of what we're doing. However, if it bombs for some reason, like if you forget something like important with the MLA format, our rubric really punishes that too heavily, in my opinion. These classwork grades I try to do as completion, just to offer a cushion. And so this is what I'm working with. This is what I'm revising. I apologize that you've spent so much time on this slide. I hope you enjoyed my backyard birds as you were listening. So my first task was to go ahead and revise it, and I did revise this in a way that I hope to use in the fall semester. So first I wanted to start with that overview and just check it over. Most of it was fine. I found a typo from who knows how long ago that I should have fixed. Not a typo or a revision when we changed it from the social issues. And so I felt like the overview still has the main goals and the main things that we want out of this assignment, and went with it. For the criteria, I really felt like some reprioritizing was in order. I think the 3 scholarly sources are important, as well as where they came from, since I am teaching students hopefully how to use these search engines well. The clear, well-developed argument is important. I think the formal writing is something we're definitely working on. As we know as English teachers, formal writing has a time and a place, and this is an assignment where we work on what that is and what that looks like. Then I put the MLA format because I do think learning how to use a citation system is important, but I hope to teach it in a way this time that makes it clear this is one way of doing it and here are some other ways of doing it, and then submitting to Schoology with the proper formatting I think is also important. And so I tried to reprioritize this list a little bit so that it wasn't so heavily focused. One of the big things in the English department that I haven't quite wrapped my head around is that the MLA format is very important. It is department policy that if a paper is turned in without an MLA formatted works cited page, that it automatically receives a 0, and you're not supposed to give a student a chance to resubmit it, which I have never adhered to. If a student submits a paper without a works cited page, I work with them and we get that works cited page submitted so I can give them credit. But this has been a major thing in the English department for whatever reason. This is the place where the most obvious changes are happening. Instead of assignments, I changed the title to checkpoints. I'm not sure this is enough. I'm hoping to start the year by talking about grades and talking about ungrading so that hopefully this checkpoint vocabulary will be feeling pretty familiar to students when we're halfway through this semester. I'm playing with that language and trying to make it my own. But as you can see, I took off the points, and I kind of put day markers just to show a little bit of how the unit works. I'm not sure I'm fully on board with my timeline here. I've got to work that out a little bit. We are on a block schedule, and so sometimes things just go faster than others, but I thought it was useful just to kind of show the breakdown of how this would work. And my description down at the bottom, I think, is where I try to show them how this is going to look as far as PowerSchools go. Each task is listed in PowerSchools as completion only. If you have a green check, it means you're done. If you have an orange block, it means you have some revision to do. If you have a red check, it means I do not have the task. For each task, you will receive feedback from me via Schoology and in class conferences. And then I took off the note that I had about zeros because they're not going to be getting zeros. I'm really particularly interested in this because I think this is going to be really telling for a lot of the revision that I want to happen and the feedback that I want to happen. I am hopeful that if a student turns in, their introduction paragraph and I put in the orange block and note that I have feedback in Schoology for them to revise and resubmit, whether they resubmit that paragraph with their first body paragraph or whatever, I hope that I can go back and change that to complete. We've gotten through that piece, and we're focusing on these other ones. And so I have high hopes for how this is going to work. I think it's challenging for students to have zeros, I know, but I'm thinking of kind of my middle of the road motivated students, and I'm hopeful that this with the incomplete and the complete can be a really effective means of making that actual revision happen. So that's kind of where my thought process is right now, and that's how I've revised this assignment sheet. I think one of the big challenges with this ungrading, because I'm not putting in a completion grade exactly, is going to be helping students see, okay, here's what the feedback means, here's what I need to do with it. And so I created this organizer. I'm thinking in particular of my students that struggle, or possibly just communication tools with my resource teachers, for how this is going to keep track of what students are doing and how it's working. And so the idea would be that in the submitted column, they write the date that they've submitted it, and then they write when they receive feedback, or they can check off that they have received feedback, or something like that. I haven't quite worked that out. I may initial it for resource teachers, for example, to say like it's on Schoology. And then particularly with kids that I think need the extra help or need the conversations, I want to talk to them and make sure they can write out, here's what I need to do. You know, if my proposal was submitted, I got feedback, and it's all good, I'm ready to go, then action needed might be none. Whereas with source notes, for example, a lot of the feedback I give is that the citations that they've collected are incorrect. So the action needed might be to correct citations. For example, it might be a formatting, editing, grammar situation. It might be my paragraph doesn't have a topic sentence, or I need some more of my own commentary on this because all I have is text evidence. I'm hopeful that this is a tool for the students that need it to help them stay on track and on pace with clear goal setting in mind. Because largely based on Zerwin, but so many of our readings this semester, I really am trying to make feedback a key piece of the classroom, from both me and from students. And so hopefully that feedback and revision process is starting to feel comfortable, and we're feeling good about setting writing goals for ourselves throughout this process. If my goal is to have reflective students who can talk about their learning, then I've got to put that reflection into practice. In addition to feedback, that's probably my other major tenet of the semester that I really want to apply. And so my plan is to have students be familiar with learning goals. On this letter, I've copied the learning goals from the Zerwin text that we read together. And I chose those because I really do think they're very strong and reflective of the 10th grade curriculum. I am working on how to create those with my students this semester, and trying to decide what level of creation we're going to do and what level of, like, is it going to be more like I give it to them and I want them to make it their own? I'm still kind of playing around with how I want that to play out in these first few days of the semester. But for the purposes of this assignment, I went ahead and just copied and pasted hers. And I really do think it's important for students to submit some kind of reflection at the end of the unit to say, here's how I feel like I met some of these learning goals throughout this unit. I have debated the whole, like, this is a lot of writing. I feel like many of my students struggle with writing. I feel like they're afraid of writing. So I have also played around with the idea of just choice in this assignment. Students can create a written text if that's where they're the most comfortable. But I'm also considering having students make a recording like I'm doing now and submit me the recording, or potentially have a video kind of vlog response. There's still a level of planning that has to go into that for students, and so I'm going to encourage them, if they choose an audio or video format, to make sure that they have a plan and that they cover the essentials of the assignment, and talk about just how they feel like they've reached their goals or not. I do think I'm going to have students suggest their own grade in this. I do have to give some kind of number grade per our departmental guidelines for these grades. And so I really think I am going to have them suggest what they think they should get, and then have conferences with students over what they actually get. I'm lucky in the fall in a sense because I have 2 creative writing classes and 1 English 10 class, so I can really play around with my process this semester, and then see what works and put it into practice in the spring with my 3 English 10 classes. So I'm excited to see how this goes and what it all looks like. Throughout this process and this semester, I've really come to understand why grades are so problematic. It does feel like an inescapable reality of public education right now. And I mean, private education has grades too. But there is real truth in the fact that an A in my class does not mean the same thing as an A in a teacher down the hall's class, much less from school to school and as far as our colleges go. And my goal is always for our students to be prepared for whatever career path they want to take next. And I think the most significant thing about all of the ungrading and decentering of grading materials we've read this semester is that the product seems to be that students are more invested in the learning process, and if they're more invested in the learning process, then what they are able to work through and produce is going to make them better prepared for their next steps in life, be that college or something else. And so I do think this semester, this fall semester, is going to be an important thing for me to try out some of these things in both English 10 and creative writing. Flexibility is going to be key, as well as clear communication for students and parents. And revising this unit really showed me that even ungrading 1 unit is going to require some vocabulary development for students and some culture conversations about how we talk about grades in my classroom, especially because I know that grades are still going to be what they've always been and the other classes students are attending. And so I think my 3 big things that I really want to focus on this semester are goal setting, feedback, and reflection. I want to help my students become better at giving each other feedback. I want to help them learn to receive feedback and to use that feedback to make meaningful changes. I want them to know the learning goals and have the language to talk about those, rather than simply, I want to get an A in English because that means I'm good in English. And similarly, I want them to focus on reflection and helping to really ingrain the processes that we've worked through throughout the semester into their mind. So that is the end of my project. I feel like I've learned a lot from my classmates, from Dr. Cook, and from all of our readings. I think it's been a really wonderful semester. I look forward to trying some of these things out. And of course, seeing some of you, all of you, however it works out in the fall as we continue down our respective paths. Thanks so much.